We have an unfortunate situation where a young teen who was trying to pick up his twin brothers, he went to a home. He was pulling on the door because he thought this was the right house that he had typically picked up his twin brothers from, and a shot fired through the door, and he was critically injured and was hospitalized. Now, the whole situation is being painted by the media as a race issue, like a hate action that was violent. And what the situation really was, now we don't have camera footage to my knowledge, but yes, this young teen, this black male, was going up to the front door, tugging on the door, and the guy inside the home, I believe he's white, but an 84-year-old elder man who may or may not have his full mental faculties. We're getting tons of different information from the media right now. He saw someone tugging on his door, and he shot through the door, and that's what caused the critical injury to the guy. Now, there's a few questions here, right? Because obviously this looks like one big accident. It's unfortunate, and this guy was seriously injured. Surprising that he's still alive. And of course now you have this 84-year-old guy who's near the end of his life, presumably, who is now being charged for, well, I don't know what they're going to charge him with yet, right? They generally the prosecution wants to find something that sticks. So they have to have enough evidence to prove what they're going to stick him with. If they go too big with it, it may get dismissed, and then you can't charge again. That would be double jeopardy. So the situation is, and this is how I would paint it as, because the 84-year-old man is using self-defense, and the Ralph Yarl, the teen black kid, he's using this as my life was endangered on, right? This is attempted murder. So you have a situation, there's two situations. If someone's coming to my front door, even if it's late at night, and they're tugging on the front door, let's say I don't have any signs in my yard, like no trespassing, or you will be terminated or prosecuted if you go beyond this line, because it is your private property, and you are allowed to have those signs on constitutionally. Now, if someone is tugging on your door, you don't have any signs on your yard, whatever, in general, if it doesn't look hostile, you would announce something verbally, right? Now, I could see if you would still want to be discreet, because maybe you're a little bit suspect, you don't really recognize this person, but unless it's like, see, there's a difference between a light action and a hard action. A light action is like some kid is trying to open your door, young kid. It could be someone who is trying to legitimately burglarize you, but that's where the verbal announcement would be, or the anticipation and waiting of that person to actually break in or commit some kind of action that would look like he's breaking in, like a physical action towards a window or the door, and then you would take action on that. Versus if you have one guy who's decked out in gear, you can't really see him, or he has a weapon on him, or you have multiple guys who have weapons, or just multiple guys in general who look like they're trying to break in, that would be more of a hard action. So the question is, you have the right to defend your life if you feel like there's imminent danger. This subsequent question is, did this guy feel like he was in imminent danger, and is there enough circumstantial evidence, because we don't have direct evidence like a camera, is there enough evidence to suggest that his life was in imminent danger, and he had the right intention, the right judgment call to make that decision of firing through the door? If we're just using the situation, the circumstance, it does not look like he had the right justification. If you just see one guy trying to open your door lightly, of course your door should be locked, that's not justification enough to shoot through the door. Generally, you would verbally announce, or you would wait until there's more action to commit an action such as firing a weapon, right? Discharging a weapon. If you have multiple men with weapons, or just one guy with a weapon, and there's hard action, that is now just cause to fire through the door. That would be imminent danger. So it does look like this is one big accident. Unfortunately, there's still now, based off the hierarchy of the crime, right? Because now this is not to give any type of excuse for him being older or potentially not having his mental faculties about him, but it's not because of the intention, because crime is often the action plus intention. But if you lack the intention, but you still commit the crime, you still get charged for the crime in general. It's just at a lesser degree. It's lesser on the hierarchy. So this guy might get a light criminal penalty, but a harsh civil penalty. Okay, so light criminal penalty would mean he would still have to go to jail, serve time, X, Y, and Z, even though he didn't have the intention of trying to, he thought the situation was something else. Maybe there could be some concessions made where he would have to give up firearms or be in a certain home, or what, it depends how the court wants to take it. Because this is a really unfortunate situation where the guy thought that a different type of action was being committed, and the kid didn't know it was the wrong house, right? Very difficult situation. There was another video clip a long time ago of a female officer who pulled out a taser and was trying to taser someone but accidentally shot someone, right? She didn't have the intention of killing that person, but she grabbed the wrong weapon. And so, unfortunately, there has to be consequences and repercussions to that, but it's at a lower degree because of the intention, right? It's just an unfortunate situation. In some situations, you really cannot make a mistake because you're completely infringing on someone else's life in such a irreversible way. And the civil penalty, what I mean by a harsh civil penalty, would just be punitive damages. So this would be like a big judgment, a big settlement of you need to pay X amount of money to the family, to the child for hospital bills, and then above and beyond that, emotional distress, such and so forth. But now the other focus of this story is the media will pick and choose stories, and they'll choose the stories that fit their narrative. In this situation, they have a white guy, an older white guy, shooting a black teen. I've already seen a bunch of different reports, especially when the news just came out, where they were adjusting the situation, little details in the story, to make it look more like the guy was a victim and the black teen was a victim and the white guy was an absolute perpetrator. They're lacking the nuance and the description of intent and the holistic situation to fully embed in people's minds so that people understand the situation, right? We can have empathy in a sense of where the guy who shot was coming from because of how he was understanding the situation and where the kid was coming from. Now, there is almost zero fault on the kid other than going to the wrong house and pulling on the door, right? Like, even if I go up to the door, even if I know it's someone's house, I'll ring the doorbell or I'll knock and I'll actually step back a few steps so there's some buffer room. So the person, even if I know who the person is, a lot of times you may greet someone or meet someone or see someone and you don't notice them, or they don't notice you, like they don't recognize you until a few seconds later, right? So you create that buffer room. I'm not going to say there's much blame on that kid, but I'm just criticizing every point of this, right? Now, obviously, this kid should be given some benefit, and maybe there are some donations out there that you can give to this kid because he's in critical condition. And there's a lot of stories like this, right? But the media will always try to paint a certain narrative to push their ideology out. Now, for a few different reasons. They have a profit motive. The profit motive is, how can we create the most outrageous clickbait, the most outrageous headline, find the craziest videos, but clip it in a way that shows something that will emotionally compel you to react to it. The media understands, that people who run the media understand that we are all emotional creatures. Sure, we have cognition and we have logical thinking and reasoning, but we respond and make decisions based off of emotion. So if they can create an emotional response from us, that means they can get our attention. And when they get our attention, they get paid through advertising and through selling products and services. And so that's one motive, right? The profit motive. And these media companies make billions of dollars. They make a lot of money off people. And a lot of times, even when they put out false information, they don't retract the information, or even if they don't retract it, they never revise it or put out a following report saying, hey, we messed up, we made a mistake, here's the actual justification. Or if they do that, they put it in such a small portion, maybe like an article on their website that no one's going to read, just to say that they did retract the statement and they put a new statement out. So that's one. And then the second one is ideology. Ideology is very big, it's very macro, but an ideology can be painted in different ways. Let's say there's a certain ideology to fulfill certain interests. I'll use a very relevant interest that people can understand. Let's say the interest is we want to go to other countries. I'll use a positive from the Western Front. We as America want to go to other countries like we did from the 60s to the 90s and embed democracy in other nations, or at least at the surface level, we're saying that we're embedding democracy. We're really going over there for resources, but we're going to embed democracy in other nations so that they can be democratic and they can have more power towards the people and less authoritarian regimes. Obviously, it was a facade for that generation, but I'm just stating what the federal government said to we the people. So that's the ideology. Okay, the ideology is to go to all these other nations. That's why we have military bases. I believe we have the most military bases out of any other nation all over the world. This is why we have military bases, to spread democracy, to ensure that people have democratic means in their respective nations. And if that's the ideology, the media will come in, even though media is press, right? So that's part of the First Amendment the right to press. The right to press was initially designed to hold government responsible and accountable for actions that it did or did not do. Right now, the media, the press, what is supposed to be the press, is actually working with government. So now the government and the media work together. The government has certain ideological interests. They have a lot of resources so they can pursue those ideological interests. And then the media will come in and support the government for those ideological interests, on top of them already getting a profit motive because they're their own businesses. And they will gain public sentiment from the population to support what the government is doing. So it's kind of like I suppose it's like a triangle, right? Now, we think that the media is independent of government. So we are genuinely supporting the government's actions, their ideological interests, because we believe the media is giving us a fair and just take off of what the federal government and their agencies are doing. Really, they're just working together, and it's all a manipulation game. So that's how it works out in the macro, and that's how we can get things like going to invade other countries for decades-long wars, and then the media will come in every few weeks and change the story. You change the story, you get an emotional reaction. The people think, hey, look, the media is doing a good job reporting on this certain issue that the government has its hands in. And we feel a certain way. We feel a nationalistic way about supporting what the cause is. So we're going to support the federal government on those ideological interests. And it just loops around, every few years. And every generation has its own few big events of what the ideological interest is and what the media is doing to support those ideological interests. So just painting the narrative of what the media does versus what the actual situation may be. In this situation, you do have an unarmed black kid who was hurt. In most situations, the media spins it 180 degrees. It's almost never the same story that actually occurred in real life. In this case, it's pretty close. This is an unfortunate situation. And now the question is, what constitutes itself as self-defense? Was there imminent danger? Is there enough evidence to suggest that this guy was in imminent danger? And that's what the jury is there to decide.